Is it safe to have a link on a web page that was de-indexed? I know that's a big requirement for tools like link research tools when determining link health. Um, so I actually took this one from kind of from like a customer service question because I thought it was really good
Mm-hmm.
because
It is.
um, the I think the whoever was asking it was a little bit confused between de-indexed and not indexed,
Gotcha.
which is a big difference.
Yes.
So yeah, we'll kind of get into that a little bit. So first of all, we'll just answer the question directly. Is it safe to have a link on a web page that was de-indexed? And the answer, for the most part, is yes. If it so
Yeah,
let's
it's
say
already
this.
dead. I mean,
So it's like you got this website, you've got your big website that you really like, and you got a link from this other website, and Google said, oh, this other website that you got a link from, actually, they're doing some crazy black hat stuff, and we're going to de-index the site completely. And we're taking the site off the index, and Google kind of sees this as a bad site now, but they still have a link pointing to you. So the fear is that, because this horrible bad site that Google knows is bad is linking to me, is that bad for my site's health? And overall, the answer to that is no, actually.
well,
Well, there's a caveat. The caveat is you don't want too many of them.
yeah, it depends on, well, so it's like typically if you're building the way that we recommend to build, which is insulating your site properly, doing things that are more natural, your site is going to be more insulated from being affected by, like a PBN link that gets de-indexed. Why is that? Because you've got higher trust, right? However, if you're doing things that are a little bit spammier, you've got one link going to an inner page that got you, some rankings, and then all of a sudden you get de-indexed, and it's pretty, obvious that you were, or maybe even not so obvious, but you don't have the most trustworthy of link profiles. You might get a slap. And depending on how you're building, that can be, a little bit more extreme sometimes. But overall,
Let's say it like this though. Like let's say you have a kind of a small site. You've
mhm,
got about 100 referring domains,
yeah.
and you get a link from a de-indexed site. And everything else on your site is
So
pretty
are we
natural.
talking about getting a link? So adding a link to a de-index site, or this
The
site
site
gets
gave you a
de-indexed?
link and then it got
Yeah.
de-indexed
Okay.
maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's gonna depend on like what that link was doing. If it was an exact match to like an inner page, depending on how well insulated that inner page is. So other anchors, other backlinks going to it. You might not feel it at all. But then other variables to look at when you're considering stuff like that is like what type of link is it? So is it a PBN that got de-indexed? How many outbound links were on that page? If it's just one to your website, it's going to be a bit more of a red flag than if you've got some authority outbound links in there, etc. Right? So diversification of the site that got de-indexed as well as your backlink profile is going to help insulate you um, in those kinds of cases. Like, typically if I see a de-index on something, my money site's not going to feel it at all. Or maybe it's going to get like a small slap that'll last a couple days, but I'm not gonna even really feel it. Um,
Yeah, so
you
like
know,
the way I think about it is that, if you're doing everything else, if everything, by and large, the majority of all your other stuff is fairly natural, you're
mhm.
doing a good job, you're building a diverse mix of links, you don't have, just you're not doing anything super spammy or like ultra very visibly black hat and unnatural. A de-indexed link or even a couple de-indexed links or from websites that got de-indexed is shouldn't hurt you. And you can think about it like this as well. Like think about how easy it would be to hurt someone's website with negative SEO if all it took was, giving them links and then having the sites be
Yeah,
de-indexed or
maybe
whatever.
spamming the so like you'd send 10 PBNs to a site and then spam
Yeah.
them all out until they're de-indexed. Which I mean, people do stuff like that, but yeah, I don't think it works quite
Yeah, it'd be more like you
as
just
quickly as it
it'd be more
used
like you
to.
just like lost the juice from it
Hmm.
rather than like it's gonna like hurt you. Um
Something else to note is like, all of this is based on it. Just picture it like a friend circle, right? Google bots are doing the same thing with these websites, right? So typically people that hang out with only shady characters are going to, birds of a feather flock together, right? Versus, somebody who's got like one friend that's kind of shady might not, fit into that type of circle. The same thing is going on with analyzing your website and actually charting all that data, right? Googlebot is saying, well, that's weird. This website is connected to like count, like let's say you've got 100 referring domains going to your website, and 80 of those are in bad, shady hosting neighborhoods. Or they're all like a specific type of backlink, etc. All that stuff is going to build a sort of profile based on how your money site sits as far as like Google trust goes, right? So yeah, that's kind of what you want to pay attention to if you're looking to insulate yourself from this kind of stuff, affecting you a little bit more.
So now let's go into the question a little bit more, and I want to talk about the difference between de-indexed and not indexed.
Yeah, that's probably good.
So de-indexed means that Google had added the site to the search index. It was saying this is a source of information that you might care to look at. And then basically something happened and Google said, this site is absolutely now not something that should be looked at. And they basically, it's usually they did something super black hat and they got caught. And so they would de-index it. So the difference between that and a site that's not indexed is a little bit different. A site that's not indexed just means that, maybe it's a new site or whatever, and it hasn't been added to the index, or even maybe just a page. So let's say, for example, you bought a guest post. And so, a guest post is actually the website is they're creating a new article. They're creating a new URL on their website with an article with your link in it. Well, if they give you, say, hey, we built your link, like, immediately. So their website might be indexed, but that URL that your link is on might not yet be indexed. And it doesn't mean, that page hasn't been de-indexed. They haven't, like, Google hasn't said, oh, this page is horrible and we're de-indexing it. They're saying that they just don't know about it yet. So it's a very, very different, like, situation, right? There was something else I wanted to add though. Have you ever seen, like, Google like so let's say there's this site abc.com, and they find the one URL, one page on the site or whatever. Well, is it ever possible for them to de-index one page, or do they always de-index on URL, on full domain? So I thought it was just full domain.
Yeah, it's typically full domain, though I've seen certain PBNs basically get de-indexed and then a couple pages will linger in the SERPs for whatever reason, which is pretty strange. But yeah, typically it's the whole domain if we're talking about an actual de-index.
Yeah, because I've never seen. So what I wanted to say was, so if you get a link and the link is on a URL and the URL is not indexed, it just but the actual domain you check and the domain is indexed, just the URL that your link's on is not indexed. Then yeah, it's not a de-indexed link. It's just the URL isn't indexed yet.
Right.
So then it's like really, really you don't need to worry about it. Well, but you worry about it in a sense that you want it to be indexed. If it doesn't get indexed over time, then you're probably gonna want to talk to your provider or whatever and have them either replace it or see what's going on with it. But yeah, just to summarize, links from de-indexed sites, or you get a link from a site and it gets de-indexed. It's not the best thing in the world, but in general, if you're doing everything right, I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Yeah, think about like a PBN that gets de-indexed with 10 authority outbound links to random websites. They didn't ask to be put on there, so Google knows that happens, right? So they can't just go out and outright penalize websites based on a hunch, saying, oh, well, they have to have definitive proof, basically, that, that website was trying to game the system. And
Oh.
I think what Chris said about it probably just, instead of negatively affecting you, just if it did help you out, kind of taking that juice back is a more likely scenario.
What I would worry about is if, let's say let's say 10 or 5, 10, 20% of your backlinks, those sites got de-indexed.
Yeah.
Then you're probably going to be in some trouble.
Yeah.
Because then that is not natural.
1 out of 5 de-index, okay.
1 out of 5, 20%?
Well, I mean,
That's
like,
pretty
if
big.
it's like going to like an inner page or something like that, I would feel like you're probably well insulated if you're not using exact match anchors and stuff. But yeah, it is still pretty big. But I don't really think about, like, I don't know. Very often
Basically,
to build that many links.
basically you don't want a pretty good chunk of your backlink profile getting de-indexed, because then Google says, why is this site continually getting links from websites that we think are super black hat and are taking off our index? They're gonna think there's like the pattern is just too much to say, oh, it's just an accident. You know, if it's just a couple or whatever, that's completely normal and it happens all the time. But if it's starting to make up a good chunk of your backlink profile, you need to worry. that it's worry time for you. But yeah, but also, you know, keep in mind there's a big difference between de-indexed and not indexed. So yeah, definitely pay attention to that as well. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. Be sure to check the description below for links to our blog for more info on this topic, along with a bunch of other cool stuff like case studies, our Facebook community, and our link building services. And like always, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell if you enjoyed the video. Thanks and happy ranking.